On this episode, we continue with our parenting series. Today we're joined by Linda Ranson Jacobs, the creator and developer of Divorce Care for Kids. That's up next on this episode of the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Welcome to Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, where families are equipped to reflect God's redeeming love. And now here are your hosts, Michael Campagna and Jared Lambert.
Welcome back to the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, where families are equipped to reflect God's redeeming love. I'm your co-host, Jared Lambert. Today I'll be without my co-host, Michael Campagna. Thank you for taking time to join us on this episode. We are in the middle of our parenting series, and as we said in the teaser today, we have the honor and the privilege of speaking with Linda Ranson Jacobs. She is the creator and the developer of Divorce Care for Kids. Divorce Care for Kids helps children ages 6 through 11 heal from hurts caused by separation or divorce of their parents. At Healing Place Church, our Divorce Care for Kids group, children learn how God's love strengthens them and gives them hope and joy. Children also build friendships with those in similar situations. Divorce Care for Kids does have a sign-up process, and we offer it once every spring and fall. It runs simultaneously with the adult divorce recovery class. Divorce Care for Kids class cost is $20 to cover supplies. Siblings are strongly encouraged to take the class in separate semesters. If you have any more questions or want to sign up for Divorce Care for Kids or Divorce Care class, email us at newbeginnings@healingplacechurch.org. That's New Beginnings, all one word, newbeginnings@healingplacechurch.org. Well, today's guest, Linda Ranson Jacobs, is one of the forefront leaders in the areas of children and divorce and single-parent family needs. Having been both divorced and widowed, Linda was a single mom who learned firsthand the emotional and support needs of broken families, and she developed a passion to help these hurting families. As a children's ministry director, children's program developer, speaker, author, trainer, and therapeutic child care center owner, Linda has assisted countless single-parent families and their children. In 2004, Linda created and developed Divorce Care for Kids. It's a Bible-based, Christ-centered ministry tool designed to bring healing, comfort, coping, and communication skills to children coming out of a divorce. For 8 years, she served as the Divorce Care for Kids Executive Director and is now the Divorce Care for Kids Ambassador, where she helps spread the word about Divorce Care for Kids and teaches ministry leaders how to create a family-friendly church for single parents and their kids, and also how to help children who have challenging behaviors. Ms. Linda also contributes to many blogs and periodicals, including Divorce Ministry for Kids, Relevant Children's Ministry, biblicalparenting.org, CM Connect Radio, and K Magazine. Miss Linda, we appreciate you carving out time to join us for this episode. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, and thank you for inviting me. I just love doing these kind of shows, so thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, anything where we can help people. So, all right, so let's get right on into it. Why don't we talk a little bit to start off about what are some of the more common parenting challenges during and after a divorce for kids?
Well, basically, right after a divorce, or even in the divorce process and after divorce, the parents are pretty stressed out, or at least one parent's going to be stressed out, but most time it's both parents. So these parents can't think logically. You know, I don't know if you've ever been under a lot of stress, but your mind is just consumed.
Right.
And you just have, you're just looping through, you just keep these thoughts, just keep looping. It's like a big circle, and they just keep looping and looping, and you're trying to figure out what you did wrong, or I'm going to say this, or when I go to court, I'm going to do that. I've got to remember to tell my lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And so really, you're just so overwhelmed, you can't even think about parenting. And then your third grade child walks in and says, I got in trouble at school today, and you're supposed to call the teacher. And it's just almost too much for the parents to handle. So I think probably the biggest challenge is just learning how to de-stress so you can parent your children during that time. I know for myself, there was probably the first 6 months after my children's father left, my husband left, I didn't even parent. I mean, my kids just existed. I would just stumble home and stumble upstairs. I don't even know what they ate. I mean, you're just so overwhelmed, you just can't think at the time. So I would think that would probably be the biggest challenge, is just figuring out how to handle the stress, what to do with the stress, putting the stress aside so you can parent your kids.
Right. I've always heard that divorce was one of the most stressful things that a person can go through. So if we have some listeners out there and you're just wondering why you're struggling, can we just encourage them to let them know that this is a stressful season for them, and to really make sure that they balance, taking care of their own heart, taking care of their own soul, and they want to be healthy in order to provide a healthy environment for their children. Wouldn't you say that's right?
Yes, and just be encouraged that you will get through this time. It's just so overwhelming right now, but get into some type of a divorce support group like Divorce Care, or in a Sunday school class, or a Bible study, or a small group where you have an outlet where you can, I couldn't even pray for a while. That sounds terrible, but you're just overwhelmed. So, and nobody told me that was okay. It's okay right now. Just get through your day and just know that you're going to get through this time. You will survive, and your kids will survive too.
Right. And just, again, encourage listeners, we serve a Savior who is familiar with grief and acquainted with our sufferings, and we know that the veil was torn, and now we have access into the Holy of Holies. So the last thing we need to do during times of hurt is run away from God. So I just really encourage, this is a time to press in, and to really, even if it's against your flesh, or if it's against your mind or emotions, just like you said, get into a group, draw near to the Lord during this time. Let's talk about the children. How, from your experience, how does divorce typically affect the children involved?
Well, believe it or not, it affects their behavior most of all. And this is when you may start getting calls from the school teacher or the Sunday school teacher, or grandma says they're just so out of control. What do I do with them? Because the child is just... they don't know what's going on. It's chaos, and so it affects their behavior because everything has changed. Many times the schedules have changed, the routines have changed. Maybe, maybe rituals have changed. Maybe Daddy high-fived little Johnny every morning when he left for work, and they high-fived or fist-bumped, and he'd always say, "Have a wonderful day." And then all of a sudden, Daddy's gone. There's no fist-bump. There's no high-five. That ritual needs to be replaced. That doesn't mean Mom needs to go and high-five Johnny, but there needs to be something that takes place. It's kind of a goodbye ritual. So Mom needs to develop something, or if the little boy lives with Dad, whatever those things have changed for the child. So we have to think about their behavior. And I was just talking to a parent this last weekend, and she had she something about a computer, and she told her son he couldn't use it. Well, he lied, and he used the computer, and so she got him from the computer immediately, and he yelled at her, and this is so typical. And what we need to do during these times as parents is we need to provide grace and mercy to these children. That doesn't mean they can just get by with doing whatever. But I said to this mom, at that moment when you realized he was lying to you, that would have been a good time to step back and say, you know what, even if you have to put your hand up, you know what, I need to think about this for a little bit because I don't want to react in the moment. So I'm going to go talk to God about this, and you and I will talk later. So that calms the situation down. That also calms Mom or Dad down, because when we're stressed out and when they're throws of parenting alone, we tend to react. And so instead of reacting, we need to step back, think about it, and then act on the situation. Don't react, but act to the situation. These children can't think logically, and they think if one parent left, is the other parent going to leave me too? Mm-hmm. So again, these children are under stress too. Does that make sense? Absolutely.
I mean, we did some work with the Humanitarian Disaster Institute during the floods from up at Wheaton College, and we were speaking about specifically children, and they were saying how important routine was and how important it was for them to feel secure. And, just like a natural disaster, a divorce or a separation, it really affects the children. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And now in a lot of areas, I'm not sure where you are in Baton Rouge, but in many areas like where I am, Florida, the judges are just automatically doing shared custody. This is not where the child visits the other parent on the weekend. This is joint shared custody. Everything is shared. So
Yeah.
the child lives at mom's house one week, and then the child lives at dad's house one week, and then the child lives at mom's house. So routines can be entirely different. It's just very confusing for these children. I mean, like, did I leave my backpack at dad's, or is my backpack at mom's? Is my favorite shirt in the drawer at mom's house, or is the shirt I'm supposed to wear to the concert at dad's house? So do you see, all these things are floating around. It's no wonder their behavior's out of control.
Yeah, and I'm sure it varies over the different ages. Okay, let's talk about what are some behaviors that we can look for in our children to indicate that they are struggling.
Well, they may withdraw, where maybe little Johnny's always hugged you every morning. He's withdrawing, or maybe Tia has always been right by your side when you're cooking breakfast, and now she's struggling getting out of bed in the morning. So withdrawing, pulling away from the parent. Sometimes they'll act out to get attention. I mean, how many times have you heard somebody say, they're just acting that way to get attention? And I say, well, duh, given the attention they need, then yes, they are acting out to get the attention. So we do need to give them attention. See, what people don't understand is even negative attention to a child is attention.
Right.
So we need to turn that around, and we need to go, oh, look at you, you're being so silly today. Come over here and help me put the eggs in the pan or whatever. So turn that acting out around and make it a comical situation. So you're pulling the sting out of the situation.
Right.
And you're getting the child's attention in really severe situations. And I hate to bring this up, but in really severe situations, a child may start scratching themselves or trying to hurt themselves, even cutting, self-harming.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of tweens and teens. That's an escape measure for them. So they'll cut. It doesn't make sense to us that are logical in our minds why you would cut to make yourself hurt, but it is something that they do. So if a child is cutting, you do need to get some professional help.
Absolutely.
But a lot of children will just start by scratching their skin really bad, or maybe they'll pick at a little wound, and then it just gets deeper and deeper. So that's one thing. Also, teens and tweens will escape into their devices. Where an elementary age child or a preschool may pull away, a tween or a teen will you can't get their face out of their phone or their device or their game or whatever it is they're doing. And a lot of these kids are going to go online to search for answers. And that's very, very scary. So there's got to be parental controls on the phones, on the iPads, on the everything, TV, everything. And I know parents are stressed out, but please, there's got to be controls on this online behaviors.
Yeah. Is there data or studies that shows typically when self-harming may begin in kids going through trauma?
Self-harming can start at any age, and it's amazing. We even have elementary age children now attempting and completing suicide.
Wow.
Children as young as 8 and 10, because they just feel like life is so miserable, and they don't know what to do, and they want out, so they think about taking their lives. And many will attempt to do that, and like I said, many succeed. It's just horrific to think a 10-year-old would harm himself that much. We think a second or third grader doesn't understand all the ramifications of that. But I've dealt with a couple of kids that threatened suicide, and so. Yeah, so it just depends on your situation, what all is going on, but this is where it's really important for both parents to stay in contact with the children. So vital that you have a relationship and an ongoing conversation with these kids every single day.
Right, and it just kind of reminds me of the access that kids have now. I mean, even in some shows that may seem innocent, or even on networks that may seem innocent, there is a lot of that dark stuff. That does plant the seed. So I can really relate to making sure that you have that connection and you are communicating early and often in your kids' life. And it may not even be a divorce or a separation, but it could be just any sort of trauma where their mind starts wandering in that direction. So it's not necessarily just for the trauma of divorce or separation.
Right, and to a kid now, I mean, even my 8-year-old grandson last year I was giving him a spelling test. He didn't know how to spell a word, so he grabbed my phone and he goes, "Hey Siri, how do you spell?"
Yeah.
I mean, this is their thought process. Go to Google, go online, go and get an answer, go
Mm-hmm.
ask Siri for an answer, which, it shouldn't be that way, but that's what it is. And so
Right.
we're going to have to learn to deal with that, and we're going to have to learn to accommodate that and to work with our children in that area.
Well, let's get a little bit more specific. What are some proactive ways that parents can shepherd their children, especially through divorce or separation?
Well, stay attuned. You have to stay in tune and attuned to your children. So you have to know what they're doing all the time. And believe me, parents, I know this is hard. I was a single mom for years. I raised my children from the time they were 8 years old and 12 years old, all through their teenage years. And my son was only second grade, so all through his elementary age years too. And you work hard. You're just trying to survive, but you have to know your kids. So, I mean, you have to know where they are all the time. You have to know who their friends are, and that's difficult. But that means, how do you know who their friends are? You talk to them. You find out. You ask them questions every day. So, who did you sit with lunch today? Who is your favorite friend this week? Is there any new kids in your school this week? Tell me about your friends. So you have to have that. I can't say this enough. You have to have an ongoing conversation. Even the parent that doesn't live with the child, they still need an ongoing conversation. So, you have to just put your feelings aside when you get home from work and you're exhausted and your boss has chewed you out or whatever. You just have to lay that aside while you deal with your children. You can pick that up later on before you go to bed or early the next morning, whenever. And then create fun times with your kids. Oh my gosh, this is so important. Crazy fun things that you can do and be spontaneous. I tell people that one night that stands out in my kid's mind through all the years, through my daughter's teenage years, is I came home one night and her friend were watching a Planet of the Apes marathon. I didn't even know there were that many Planet of the Apes movies, but they were watching this marathon on TV, and they go, Mom, come sit with us, join us. This is the last thing I wanted to do is watch Planet of the Apes. But my daughter and her friend invited me. I go, okay, well, I'll watch maybe one movie with you. Well, we ended up making popcorn, and we pulled out candy. And I don't know, somewhere around 3 o'clock, I think I dozed off. But the next morning, I woke up, and the sun was streaming in the patio windows, which is what woke me up. My son had moved to the couch, sound asleep. Here's my daughter and her friend sprawled out on the floor. The TV's still blaring. But that one evening just cemented in my daughter's mind the fun times we could have and the spontaneous things that we could have, spontaneous pillow fights that we had, and things like that. So just relax and have fun with your kids.
Yeah. Even on our best day, we're going to make some mistakes. So from your experience working with families, what are some of those common mistakes that parents and the step-parents make with children who are going or have gone through a divorce?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes single parents make is they start dating too soon. And then they introduce their child to their new love life. And, when you're 28, 30, 40, even 50, and a new person walks into your life, you feel like you're 15 again, and you get all gooey and silly and acting in love. Well, you know what? The child doesn't love that person. They don't know that person. And they have a dad or they have a mom. They don't want to have anything to do with that person. So that's a big mistake is falling in love and introducing this child too soon to this person. And step-parents also, getting married and having the step-parent take over that parenting responsibility. Anytime a family gets married, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I think for the first whole year, through all the birthdays and holidays and all those things, the birth parent should do the majority of the parenting of that child and gradually bring the step-parent into it.
Right.
So at first the dad is doing the parenting and the discipline, and then after a few months, depending on if there's a relationship building, then the dad says, well, I'm going to have to talk to my wife about this, your stepmom, and then we'll get back with you. And you gradually bring that other parent into the picture. But after all, this child doesn't love that person like you do.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue that that the step parent should just kind of be in a consulting role, and then, like I said, just ever so gradually you pull them in. And again, a lot of fun things and a lot of rituals and a lot of relationship building has to take place with the parent and the step parent.
Yeah. Yeah, dating too soon, I mean, I think you explained it great, but I just kind of want to reemphasize, and maybe you can help when we go through a separation and a divorce and we feel like we want to pursue a new relationship, I think what's going through my mind is that, I think we make that new relationship a priority over the children, where, if we're not married and we don't have that covenant relationship with another spouse, then our priority and responsibility has to make sure that the child is healthy and recovering. We don't want to make the mistake of maybe emotionally abandoning our children in order for us to meet the need that we have for a mate, or and a companion, and then we're gonna not only have they not recovered from the separation or the divorce, but now they have this new step parent that kind of builds on that hurt.
And this is especially true if it was an affair and that other person is the one that broke up your parents' marriage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So be very, very cautious what you're telling your children. They don't need to know all the details of your life. Right. I say you never lie to a child. You always tell the child the truth. If they ask a question, but you give it to them on their developmental level.
Right.
And you give them small bits of information at a time. And then you always go back later on and say, do you have any more questions about this situation? So, one way we put it in divorce care is when you start dating, it's like Novocaine to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You're numbed from the divorce and you're all excited and you're feeling good. Well, the kids don't have that. Yeah. They still are hurting. So those are some things we have to remember when we're dealing with these children.
Now, worst case scenarios, we would need to engage in professional counseling for our children. So what would you say are some indications that children do need the help of a professional counselor?
Well, the school teacher calls repeatedly. If you get one or two calls from school, that's not that big a deal. It's a transition time. But you start getting a lot of calls from school, excuse me, or you pick the child up from child care and several days in a row, there's issues, or when you walk in the door, the child care teachers, after-school teachers rolling her eyes. Those are times that you want to seek some professional counseling, and you may only need one or two sessions. And let me just say this. What we've learned over the years is not only does a child need counseling and you need counseling, but you all need family counseling. Many times the parent sets this child up to fail by how we deal with them. And we rush them. We get them up late in the morning. We rush them to school. We rush them here. We rush them there. Our lives are disorganized. And we wonder why they go to school and they're out of control. They can't think. They don't get their spelling words. So many times, like I said, you need family counseling so the counselor can help you as a parent know what to say, how to address situations, and then with the child too. And we just don't think with, okay, send this kid over here and let him deal with the therapist or counselor, and he's going to be okay. But he's not going to be okay. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. And if a child's cutting, if they are saying, I just don't want to live anymore, some professional help needs to come in at that time. If they're extremely angry and raging, you can't get control, they're throwing things at home, they're screaming and yelling, and this is especially true if there's been any abuse in the family, like if it's a woman who's been abused and then the teenage boy or the teenage tween boy starts doing what his dad did, there needs to be some professional help brought in at that time too.
Gotcha. Now we touched on it just a little bit before, but I want to go back there and talk about it. Now, if in the context of children and creating a new blended family, what do you feel would actually prevent a parent from moving forward with another marriage?
Well, parents have to heal first. And I can't say this loudly and strongly enough. Parent, you have to heal first from whatever brought you into single parenting. If it was a divorce or a death, you have to heal from that. If you don't heal, you're disrupting your single parent home. And there's a difference between a broken home and a single parent home. And that's a whole nother podcast that we need to do. But when you're hurting and you're not parenting, you have a broken home. And so you've got to heal. And, I tell people you need to get through a whole year of everything first before you even think about another relationship. and a lot of people don't. I mean, I've had people come to divorce care, and halfway through they'll drop out because they met somebody and they're dating, and that's a big mistake. And I tell single parents, just wait. You know what? You can date later. Right now, your main priority is your children. So parents have to heal first, and they have to grieve the loss of the union. You know,
right.
People don't realize this, but divorce is the death of a marriage.
Yeah.
It is the death of the marriage. And if a parent dies, we take in meals and we allow that person time to grieve. That doesn't happen with the divorce, and yet it is still a death. And so we need to treat that divorce as a death of the union, the marriage. They need to grieve the loss of family. You know, they may have been best friends with their mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law no longer is available to them. So they have to grieve the loss of friends who no longer are. You know, you have couple friends, and when you're single, you no longer have couple friends. You have to grieve that loss. And maybe you have to grieve the loss of your place in the church. Maybe you're not allowed to teach that class you used to teach or do whatever it was you did at the church because now you're divorced. And maybe the church is giving you time to grieve by not allowing you to do that, but it's still something that you have to grieve. So, you know, just pray before you get involved in a blended family, and then go slowly into that blended family. Go slowly into that step family. Give the kids time to build relationships, and give the children time to grieve. You know, and if you've been parenting for a long time, single parenting, still, your children need time to even grieve the single parent, because now you're bringing someone else into the home. Yeah. So just a lot of issues that we have to remember as we blend these families, and it's just exactly what it is. It's a blending of two different families that we're bringing together.
Awesome. All right, Miss Linda, wanted to give you the opportunity to share any projects or resources that you have available. I know specifically for Divorce Care for Kids, you can get information at their website, www.dc4k.org. That's www.dc4k.org. Anything outside of the website, any projects or events you got coming up you'd like to share?
Well, you know, on the website, there's a place on dc4k.org called Parent Zone,
right?
And there's all kinds of articles for parents to read on the Parent Zone about parenting your children in divorce. I also blog extensively, and that's at blog.dc4k.org. Just put the blog in front of dc4k.org. Right. And there's probably 300 articles on there, and there's things for school teachers and brain research and children in trauma and crisis on that. So, and then I blog on careleader.org, which is a new website that's just come up.
Awesome.
So, so those are just some resources that you guys can have access to. And
now as
far as projects and things, I'm always going out speaking somewhere.
Right.
So.
And do you have any website or anything where you have your calendar or where you'll be speaking at?
I don't anymore. I just really actually need to get back onto that. But I'm trying to cut down on some of that speaking a little bit.
No doubt.
But I don't. Yeah, okay. I don't right now. But they can contact me through the blog. There's a place for contact, and they can ask me and I can email that way. Mm-hmm.
Well, excellent. Well, once again, if you're a part of the Healing Place family or you're here in the Baton Rouge area, we do provide both divorce care and divorce care for kids, and that's on Friday nights. And like we said in the intro, you can email us at newbeginnings@healingplacechurch.org. That's all one word, newbeginnings@healingplacechurch.org. And to get more detail about Healing Place Church is divorce care for adults, and then also we run divorce care for kids in parallel with that on Friday night. So I encourage you to take advantage of that if you need it. Well, all right, Ms. Linda. Well, listen, once again, we appreciate you taking the time out. I was just excited, talking to you, and I really think it was going to be helpful and a lot of good low-hanging fruit for everybody who was listening today. So we really thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Appreciate you listeners taking the time out and joining us today. We'll look forward to catching you next time on the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. For more information about Healing Place Church, visit us online at healingplacechurch.org. To stay informed of upcoming events, check us out on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with your family and your friends.